Good evening and welcome to another segment of Deltasations Live. My name is David Payton and I am your host. This program is sponsored by Gateway Solutions Incorporated right here in Yazoo City, the gateway to the Delta. Due to recent events in the Yazoo community, and since October is known as Domestic Violence Awareness Month, we wanted to establish a powerful and informative panel discussion addressing the impact of domestic violence in our community. This forum brings together local leaders, advocates, and experts to shed light on the realities of domestic abuse, share personal insights, and provide vital resources to victims and families seeking support. Now, before I move forward with the panelist discussions, I also want to acknowledge October as Breast Cancer Awareness Month. I've had family members who were recently diagnosed, long-term survivors, others that lost their battle with this disease, and I wish to honor everyone who has been impacted. So now, at this time, I'd like to introduce our panelists. Our first panelist is Natasha James. And Natasha serves as an outreach service coordinator and victim advocate for Haven House Domestic Violence Shelter, where she is deeply committed to supporting survivors and raising awareness about domestic violence throughout the community. With a great passion for advocacy, Natasha connects individuals and families with essential resources, offers compassionate emotional support, and champions safety, healing, and empowerment. Through strategic community outreach, educational initiatives, and trauma-informed care, she works to ensure that survivors are not only heard, but uplifted. Her mission is to help them reclaim their voices and rebuild their lives with dignity, resilience, and hope. Our next panelist, we have Mr. Patrick Jaco III. Mr. Jaco is a dedicated law enforcement professional, currently serving as interim chief of the Yazoo City Police Department. A proud native of Yazoo City and graduate of Yazoo City High School, Chief Jaco brings over 17 years of experience in policing, public safety, and community engagement. Throughout his career, he has demonstrated a steadfast commitment to protecting and serving the citizens of Yazoo City with integrity, accountability, and compassion. His leadership is rooted in deep local ties and a clear understanding of the challenges and strengths unique to the community he calls home. As interim chief, Jaco is focused on building trust, enhancing departmental transparency, and fostering collaborative relationships with residents, civic leaders, and youth. His vision includes strengthening officer training, promoting community policing, and ensuring that every neighborhood feels heard and protected. Our next panelist is Representative Fabian Nelson with the Mississippi House of Representatives, District 66. Elected in 2023, Representative Nelson represents, again, District 66, covering South Jackson, Byram, Terry, Raymond, and Utica. A Yazoo City native, he brings lived experience and a deep commitment to equity, opportunity, and reliable representation, his guiding principle and public service. A lifelong learner, Nelson holds multiple degrees, including an MBA in entrepreneurship and pursuing a PhD in public policy. He founded Mississippi United Realty in 2009, promoting homeownership and revitalization statewide. In the legislature, he serves on housing, technology, military affairs, and judiciary B committees. His first session saw over 50 bills, including a historic $10 billion Amazon investment and House Bill 1137, expanding narcotic access. He also led the creation of Mississippi's first domestic violence fatality review committee. Dedicated to youth mentorship and community outreach, Representative Nelson continues to champion inclusive, evidence-based leadership to build a stronger Mississippi. Our next panelist is Reverend Dr. Sandra Wilson, who is a provisional elder with Mississippi United Methodist Church Conference, pastor of St. Stephen's United Methodist Church in Yazoo City, and Clark Chapel United Methodist Church in Cary. Reverend Dr. Wilson is a seasoned educator, faith leader, and advocate with deep Mississippi roots and a legacy of Methodist ministry. A retired principal and teacher across Mississippi, Kentucky, and Georgia, she is also a Special Operations Army widow and proud mother of two. She holds multiple degrees, including BS and MS in elementary education from Jackson State University, educational specialist in administration and supervision, Master of Arts in Special Education from Kentucky State University, Master of Divinity from ITC Gammon Seminary, and Doctor of Divinity, Northeastern Theological Seminary. Her ministry centers on justice, healing, and compassion, especially for survivors of domestic violence, mental health challenges, and bullying. Inspired by John Wesley's call to do all good you can, she leads with grace and unwavering commitment to community and faith. Okay, and next, we have Kelly L. Malone Oliver, who's district attorney and is a dedicated community leader and proud resident of Benton, Mississippi, where she has lived for the past 11 years. She received an undergraduate degree from Alcorn State University in 1999 and earned her Juris Doctorate from the University of Mississippi in 2002. In 2010, Akili made history by becoming the youngest district attorney and the first Black female to serve the 22nd Circuit Court District, it was 21st Circuit Court District of Mississippi, which transitioned into the 22nd Circuit Court District in April 2025. She is now celebrating her 15th year in this role. A graduate of Alcorn and active member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, Akili is deeply rooted in the alumni chapter of Holmes County. She worships at Mount Zion Missionary Baptist Church in Vaughn, Mississippi, and lives by the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Her career, which she describes as God's plan for me, is marked by hard work, dedication, and a commitment to making a positive impact in her community. She believes that true success is guided by faith and divine favor. With a strong work ethic and a heart for service, Akili strives to use her gifts to uplift others and leave the world better than she found it. So at this time, we'd like to start our question. And this question is for Ms. Natasha James. How do you define what domestic violence is is with any statistics and about the amount of occurrence in our community?
Well, domestic violence is a pattern of behaviors from an intimate partner or a previous dating relationship. It's also found in family relationships as well. Domestic violence is all about a power and control. Anytime there's someone who's wanting to gain power and control over a person's life or their situation, they're in a situation of domestic violence. And we all know that domestic violence is not just physical abuse. It goes on the category of financial abuse, it's sexual abuse, mental abuse, verbal abuse, and it goes on. So last year alone, it appears that nearly 100 Mississippians died from domestic violence related to homicide. Over the last 4 to 5 years, over 300 deaths in the state have been linked to domestic violence. And that's not including the non-fatal abuse, such as harassment, stalking, and simple assault that has been reported. So domestic violence is vital to, it's a very important thing that's going on right now that we need to make sure that we get the awareness to know that what domestic violence is and how can we come together to, bring out the awareness for this situation.
Okay, so what types of support services does your shelter provide for survivors beyond emergency housing?
So beyond emergency housing, we provide counseling for the individual, counseling for their children. We provide case management, in which the case manager do on a one-on-one basis, making sure that they're able to understand financial literacy, make sure they're again encouraging them to find jobs, helping them to build resumes. We also provide childcare through, and also we provide outreach. And through outreach, we're able to be a court advocate in which they may need assistance going through the court system. They may need assistance getting a protective order. They also may need assistance to get more resources on legal aid.
Okay, so I know that the center is in Vicksburg, Mississippi. So what area does the your services cover in Mississippi?
So our main counties are 9 counties. We service Warren, Yazoo, Issaquah, Sharkey, uh, Hinds County, Claiborne County, and also Adams County. Our services we provide within the shelter, we make sure that it's a confidential place. We make sure that that's the top priority. Make sure that they're able to get the services without being fearful of somebody exposing them, or they're being able to being judged for whatever situation they're in. So our goal is just to create a private and supportive space where survivors can start to heal from their trauma without just being fear of someone exposing them for, or making them feel bad for what they're going through.
So you mentioned confidentiality. How do you all ensure confidentiality? Because there may be individuals that would like to seek those services, but they're afraid someone may find out where they are and so forth. So how do you maintain that confidentiality with your clients?
So our shelter location is not a disclosed location. We do not give the address out at any time. We work together with the police department and owning the shelter staff, and certain police officers know where the shelter is. And so we make sure that when they're transported to the shelter, that it's being done safely and secure, where no one is able to find out where their location is. And we make sure that when it comes to being in the shelter, we don't expose their location. We don't expose what's going on. If someone's to call, we cannot give out information without that resident's written permission.
And what is the process if someone feels like they need that shelter? How do they go about, approaching you and to access that service?
They can always reach out to us through our hotline. We have a 24-hour hotline where someone is always there to take a call. If they need immediate shelter, we have someone who's able to help them advocate to be able to, get to the shelters safely. We bring them in, making sure that, whenever they're coming in, we're able to assess their needs. If they don't need the shelter, they can still reach out to our hotline and they can ask for outreach services. And through the outreach services, we can still provide them with counseling sessions, peer support sessions, and also legal aid section, where we can assist them through legal aid.
Okay. And one other question: how do you, I guess, help get people back into the mainstream? After they've come to the shelter and they're ready to go back into the community. How do you help them transition back without being fearful?
So the first thing we do, we try to support them in all areas. Once they're in the shelter, our main priority is to do a case management to be able to support them outside the shelter. So when they come in, we are trying to build them up and making sure that while they're in shelter, they are safe and they feel secure, and they try to rebuild their lives. And because a lot of times when they're in shelter or in a situation, the person that's their abuse is their sole provider. A lot of times they don't have education, or they don't have jobs, or they don't have any type of funds. So what we do is we try to educate them on getting saving, taking financial classes. We try to educate them on, building their resumes, trying to build them up and help them to save. We have a program where we talk to them and we help them save. So when they're able to get out back into the real world, they're able to support themselves. Also, we also help them when they're going through court system to get their protection orders, and that's the biggest thing, to be a support with them when they need a protection order. So if in a case they may run into their abuser somewhere out in the public, they're protected.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Ms. James, for sharing that information. So we'd like to hear from Mr. Patrick J. Cole at this time, Chief J. Cole with the Police Department. So our first question for you is, what training do officers receive to recognize and respond to domestic violence situations with sensitivity and safety?
Well, officers and agencies everywhere has access to trainings, domestic violence trainings, and mental awareness trainings. Some put through or held by organizations such as Our House and other organizations like that, which I personally, I say Our House because I personally attended some of their training. And in their training, I mean, they're very helpful on enlightening officers and then opening their eyes to a lot of situations. They put us through scenarios, situations where we have to assess the situation and make decisions based off what we're given. And that helps officers realize um, what they need to do going into a situation like that. And basically, being sensitive to the situation, not being too aggressive, and also trying not to victimize the victim. Um, the police department, which most agencies, I feel like that's where the first ball is dropped. And that's agencies getting that proper training to their officers.
Okay, so how does your department collaborate with local shelters like Haven House, and advocacy groups and mental health providers to support survivors?
Again, the Essex Police Department is open to any collaborations with any kind of shelters or groups of that nature. Currently, as of right now, we don't have access readily in the city limits or in Yazoo community as far as shelters go. I think the only shelters we got right now are men's shelters, but we do reach out to Warren County and other counties that do have access to those shelters, and we get them to help us best we can. We work side by side with River Regional or River Ridge, currently known as Yazoo Warren Mental Health. Um, we as we all know, domestic violence, some see it as an illness, and I do believe in my profession, over the years that I've worked, um, domestic violence can stem from mental illness. With that being said, we do have a trained CIT officer, which is a crisis intervention team officer, and he's trained in CIT. And a lot of the times, he does go out to help with mental illness calls, and also if it wraps into the domestic violence, he'll help out with that as well.
Okay, so what protocols are in place to ensure victim protection during and after a domestic violence call?
From a law enforcement standpoint, of course, the first thing is reporting, which is the 911 call that we get, and it's dispatched out to the officers for assistance. The officers get on scene, they make their assessment, they go through their protocols, they see. We basically we try to determine an aggressor. This day and age, the aggressor could be a man or a woman. It's not necessarily how most see it as the woman being the victim. Men are sometimes victims as well. Um, and the officer goes out and makes his assessment, and he shall make an arrest. After that, the courts get involved. Orders are put in place, and and at that point, the victim is in charge of following through with the charges. Um, we're also working on, which I just got with our grants writer. We're also working on a grant for a domestic violence investigator, and which means that that investigator will be hands-on with the domestic violence victim, and hopefully we can get more help to the victims because that investigator will be dedicated solely to just domestic violence. They can talk them through it. A lot of times we know that following through with the charges is a problem. Sometimes the charges get dropped. Sometimes the victims don't understand the process, so they don't trust the system. And that's where something as such as a victim advocate come into play, to bridge that part, or they bridge the gaps of the understanding and trust, and that can be alongside the investigator.
Okay, so how does your department track and analyze domestic violence cases to improve prevention and response strategies?
Well, as of right now, our reporting system, which is an E-Force reporting system, is compatible with what we call a NIBRS, which is a national-based reporting system that keeps track of national crime data, including domestic violence. But we can generate local reports off of this system. We can use what we need, the data. Um, Also, it would help for higher police presence and proper training to engage the victims of domestic violence in these situations.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Chief. So next, we'd like to hear from Representative Nelson. So tell us about the legislation that you authored and the reason behind it.
Absolutely. I first want to start by saying thank you for hosting this very important session. I think it's very important that we talk about domestic violence, and so I'm very proud to be a part of this, that you're hosting this. I'm proud of my hometown, Yazoo City, Yazoo County, for really shining a beacon on this problem. Now, before we got started, I saw some of the most beautiful Delta ladies in the country in the background. So I hope the other Delta ladies don't get mad at me, but definitely a shout out to Delta Sigma Theta. They do amazing things as far as civic involvement. There they go. Those are the most beautiful Deltas in the country, y'all. but let's talk a little bit about the legislation. And so this past session, I worked on a bill that established a domestic violence fatality review board. I worked on this for 2 years. My first year there, it didn't get much traction. This second year, we really worked it very hard, and we were finally able to get it passed unanimously in both chambers. And so what this does is it establishes a review board that investigates all instances of domestic violence fatalities. So anytime a fatality occurs, this board goes in, they look at the socioeconomic impact, they look at everything surrounding this incident. Were restraining orders filed? How many times? Where was this a habitual offender? Has this person ever been in jail? And the reason we're doing that is because you can't just come in and make legislation, because we're not going to legislate our way out of this problem. There was a bill in the Senate last session that would have increased the penalties for a domestic violence offense. And we strongly oppose that, because before we can start criminalizing people more, we need to make sure we're putting other aspects in place, such as, is there a mental health piece? Or is there a cooling down period? So we want to look at the issue from a more holistic approach before we go and just start drafting legislation that's not going to, be impactful or be meaningful. And so that's, where we're standing on that. We do have a lot of other stuff in the pipeline that we're working on and gathering data on and getting information to figure out where it is we need to go forward to protect our survivors.
Okay, and so what are you looking at doing as a result of that legislation? So what are your next steps?
Okay, next steps. One piece of legislation. I'm actually, if anybody want to see the bill, like, this is what a bill looks like. And so I'm actually working on the bill. We're drafting legislation now, and what this piece of legislation will do is it's going to put domestic violence education in our 7th through 12th grade schools. So it's going to be a part of the curriculum so that we can start teaching our teenagers what to look for with domestic violence. Because I learned something when I started investigating this and looking into it. A lot of teenagers and a lot of elementary kids are suffering from domestic violence even at those young ages. And so we need to make sure that they understand and they recognize it, because if we teach them what domestic violence look like, they may be able to help a parent that is going through domestic violence incidences, because a lot of times it's you're suffering in silence. A lot of victims don't even know that they're being abused. That's how bad it is. And so that's the main thing, that we're looking at. We're also going to be looking at some legislation to figure out, do we have restraining orders enhanced, the time frame for restraining orders. We also want to look at the statute, because what we see happening a lot is the victims will come in and not come to court, or will drop the charges. The perpetrator will convince them to drop the charges. So we are going to look at possible legislation that would allow the county or the county to pick the charges, or the state to pick the charges up, to protect the victim and make sure that that our victims are safe. And so really right now, our domestic violence board, it has been formed. They're meeting, they're reviewing some of the fatalities that have occurred, and they're going to be a guiding tool. And the unique thing about this board, which I really pushed for, was making sure that we had a lot of experts on the board. So we have district attorneys, we have judges, social workers, we have survivors. So we have family members from from victims that are on the board. But we want to make sure that we're looking at it from all angles, because putting a bunch of lawmakers together to sit up and study something is not going to get the same impact if we're not bringing the key players to the table. So that's what we're doing with this board.
Okay. And Chief Jaco mentioned about the mental health aspect of domestic violence. As far as at the state level, what are legislators doing to improve access to mental health services and crisis support for victims of domestic violence?
Absolutely. When I made it to the legislature, the funding for mental health in Mississippi was less than 2% of the budget. So we have increased funding for mental health services. We do need to increase it a little bit more, a whole lot more. We have a lot of strides that we got to take when we're looking at mental health. But I'm glad you brought that point up, because what we really look at is in domestic violence, we look at the victim, and we oftentimes don't look at what caused the perpetrator to do what they did. We don't look at, you can take a person that has victimized a person, and you can put them in jail. You can lock them up for 3-5 years. If you lock them up, they're fuming while they're still in jail. If you're not getting mandatory counseling and therapy, they're going to regress back to what they were doing when they were incarcerated. So we need to figure out what is it that we need to do as far as providing some mental health resources for people that are incarcerated that will possibly will be getting out. And so that's a very big thing for me. There are other states that are doing things for the perpetrators. I was very surprised when I studied at Harvard. One of my projects, we had to do a capstone project, and I picked domestic violence for it. And we have people from all over the world. We have a group of students from Australia. I was surprised to find out that domestic violence is all over the world. This is something that plagues every single community. So through that collaborative, we were able to, that's how we came up with a lot of stuff for the Domestic Violence Fatality Review Board, is by collaborating with other states and looking at what they're doing, as well as with other countries, figuring out, what is working, because what we have in place now, it's not working. We're seeing here alone in Hines County, we've had, in the city of Clinton, we had 2 domestic violence incidences within the past 2 weeks. Here in Byron, Mississippi, we had 1 incident this past Saturday. So it's growing exponentially.
Okay. And I guess one other question: are there any initiatives to support children who witness or are affected by domestic violence in their homes?
So on the state level, as of right now, there is not. Now, with a lot of these shelters and organizations, they do provide resources for victims and victim families. So they will provide those type of resources. That's why this bill that I'm going to be introducing next session is very important, because we're going to be able to provide resources when they go to school and talk to them about it and kind of teach them what domestic violence is and what it looks like. And this opens the door up to us going back the year after next, after this is signed in the law, saying, hey, we need more resources for our children. Because what I've learned in being in the legislature, anytime it's a very slow process to move legislation. If you go in and you can have an amazing idea, and if you throw it out there, we have to have evidence-based things to prove why we need it. And so what we're doing is we're setting the table right now, and we're putting things in place so that when we have people asking for data, we can provide it. Because believe it or not, Mississippi does not have a solid tracking system for domestic violence incidences right now. And so we're working so we can get that data, because the numbers don't lie. So those are a lot of some of the things that we're working on. This is still very new to the legislature, but I will say my 121 colleagues in the House and 52 colleagues in the Senate, they're very passionate about this, and they see how this is really tearing our state apart. And so I'm very confident that we're going to be able to make some more positive strides.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Representative Nelson, for that that information.
Absolutely.
And so we next would like to talk with Pastor Sandra Wilson. And I appreciate her transparency about sharing, being a survivor of domestic violence. So what helped you to recognize that you were experiencing abuse?
Good evening, everyone. It's an honor to be on this panel. The first thing I noticed was isolation from my relatives and my friends. And I noticed that the abuser became very silent in their state, isolating themselves away from their family and friends, stalking, devaluing words and behavior, talking down to you in the presence of other people, even within the church setting. One other thing that I noticed was they began to question where I was all the time. They wanted to know my whereabouts at all time, controlling the finances. Those were some of the things that I noticed, but it trickled off into how they related to the children as well. Not being loving and caring to the children as they should be.
Okay. So what kind of support, emotional, legal, or practical support made the biggest differences in your journey?
One major support was finding someone I could trust in the church. Uh, I must say there were some persons in the church that I was able to confide in, who were confidential and knowing what was going on in my situation, and advised me where to go and who to call. My parents were very supportive. They were supportive in my efforts to get me out of that abusive situation. But I must say that sometimes that's not the case for everyone, because sometimes when that person is attempting to remove themselves from the abuser, it's their own relatives that will make a mistake, not knowing and indirectly that they're causing a danger to their safety. They will tell the abuser where they are or where they are going or what shelter they are in, and they find their way to them. So it's very important and imperative that relatives honor confidentiality of their family member and never tell where they are, to ensure the safety of all of the family members.
Okay, so How did this experience impact your sense of identity, trust, or relationships moving forward?
I must say that this experience really affected me as a young woman. I found myself that even after many years, 40 years, I realized that I had triggers that I thought were gone and they were still existing. It was the Methodist Church, United Methodist Church, that enabled me to experience chaplaincy um, on site at hospitals, whereas you get a chance to experience every type of medical situation, legal situation, or see patients who have been experiencing abuse. And not only that helped me to recognize my triggers, it helped me learn how to become a better listener. I was referred to, in addition to that, the employee assistance program, of which most places offer. I know the state and the federal government offer employee assistance, and it's free. And normally they offer at least 6 visits and sessions, and I took advantage of that. It's available every year for any employee within the United Methodist Church, and I seeked out counseling and therapy for myself and my family on my own, and I do not regret it. And I must say this, within the church, often persons don't like to hear about domestic violence. Uh, the old saying, what happens in the house stays in the house. We have to get around that old statement because it's causing too many people to be harmed. Justice is not served by remaining silent and seeing things and watching things and hearing about things, but not moving your feet and making efforts to help them seek help and shelter.
Okay, and one other question. What would you want others, especially those currently in abusive situations, to know or hear from you? I mean, what would be your message for those individuals?
As a clergy and a catalyst of the church, because many in the community look up to the clergy in the church, deaconesses, deacons, and moreover, rather, I would advise them to seek out, like I said, EAP programs that are available on their jobs, and know that in the process of doing so and seeking the help that they need for themselves and sometimes for their family, there is hope. There is um, love available and compassion available via the church. There are many types of resources available, and I would challenge all churches and organizations to be resilient and posting the list of resources that are available so that if a person runs across this type of situation, they'll know exactly where to go and who to call and contact and post it on their bulletin board. But they need to know that God loves them, the church loves them, and number one, the pastor, especially myself, we are available to assist them to find whatever resources they need. And it is required of us, of the United Methodist Church, to remain confidential in all of these aspects. However, there's one thing that people need to realize, that if this situation becomes a crime where something has been committed within the church, the confidentiality may be set aside. And that's when it involves the just resolution, where they go about finding a just resolution and repairing any harm to any parishioner, any person, or communities by achieving real accountability and also bringing about healing at the same time.
Okay, thank you, Pastor Wilson, for sharing that. Okay, and our last panelist, our district attorney, Ms. Keely Malone. And then thank you for participating. I know you've been busy with courts and so forth, but Thank you for taking this time to join us this evening. So our first question, what legal and community-based strategies have you implemented to support survivors and hold offenders accountable?
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you so much for bringing this issue to light. The thing about domestic violence is that most of the time it's that thing that nobody talks about. It affects every home. Everyone knows someone that's been affected. And it's that taboo subject that's not being talked about. So the fact that we're here on this forum today and bringing awareness to it, that is a great thing. And I just want to commend you for bringing this topic to light today.
Yes,
As far as your question, as far as the overall impact of the overall safety and well-being of the families in my jurisdiction. Well, as you know, my jurisdiction, I serve as the chief prosecutor for Holmes, Humphreys, and Yazoo County. And from a safety standpoint, domestic violence increases the number of emergency calls to law enforcement officers. It increases from hospital visits, the request for protective services. Many of the victims, particularly women, they face an ongoing fear of the loss of housing, financial dependence, which makes it difficult to leave those abusive situations. And most of the time, as far as from a safety standpoint, I don't know if you're aware, but one of the leading causes of officer involved deaths, most of the times is that call when they go out on domestic violence situations. In Mississippi, most of the deaths that comes from the biggest threat to officer safety most of the time is from that domestic situations, especially in this state where we've actually had officers killed. From a well-being perspective, exposure to domestic violence causes long-term trauma. Children who witness the violence often experience anxiety, depression, behavior issues that can carry into adulthood. And it's a problem also just from being in school. I mean, can you imagine a kid who has witnessed, their parents fighting or the mom being abused all night long, worrying as whether or not, somebody's going to be killed. And then they got to go to school the next morning. And nobody knows that load and that weight that they've dealt with. All they know is that, hey, you showed up in school, you probably fallen asleep in class or something. They have no idea what you dealt with the night before. And that's, and that carries over into the school system. And also, communities feel the impact. A lot of employers have reported a higher absenteeism amongst their employees, decreased productivity amongst the victims in our public systems, such as healthcare, of course, and law enforcement. It faces a greater demand for these services. So it affects pretty much everything from the education system, from the job situation. It kind of spills over into every aspect.
Okay. So can you speak to any trends or changes you've observed in domestic violence cases over the past few years?
Well, I mean, one of the main things as a prosecutor is that I've noticed that there is more murder suicides from it, especially in this district. It used to be where they would once that victim has finally decided, I'm leaving, and they feel like they have lost complete and total control, then it would be more of an attack, kind of just on, the victim. Now we're noticing more where they would not only go in to harm the victim or the person, but they will also kill themselves afterwards. And a person who has that type of mentality, that's a major danger because they've just decided that nothing matters. So anybody that's involved, if you're in the home with the person, the mom, the cousin, the sister, everybody's at risk because they've made up their mind in the end, I'm going to kill myself. And that's kind of something that hadn't been, as prevalent in the past where the actual perpetrator actually committed suicide afterwards. And I've noticed, of course, just last week in Yazoo City, with the murder suicide, and it's kind of a trend that's basically going on.
Okay, so how does your office collaborate with local organizations, shelters, or law enforcement to prevent repeat offenses and protect victims? I'm
It
sorry.
started buffering, but I
Okay.
think I heard part
I
of the question.
I'm sorry. I can repeat the
Okay.
question. So,
Okay.
how does your office collaborate with local organizations, shelters, or law enforcement to prevent repeat offenses and protect the victims?
Well, what I've noticed from domestic violence situations is that most of the time, 90% of the victims or survivors, once they go in and once they press charges against the persons, and that's a hard step to make to start with, then they always want to come back to drop the charges. And that is something that I can just about guarantee that once that case get to my office, especially on the felony level, they're going to come back and they're going to want to dismiss the charges. And so what you have to dig into is that what's kind of the underlying thing that's going on with that. A lot of times this person, you know, this is the primary financial provider. So the housing is lost. So they'll say things like, okay, I'm not gonna have anywhere to stay, the finances. So what we've done is that once they press the charges and once it arrives in my office is that we have collaborated with other agencies to see can they get housing. And then a lot of times once they have to move from the perpetrator, get them out of the areas, and that's a distance. A lot of times they don't have cars, they don't have transportation. So as far as being able to come back to court so they can follow through, we will have where we will provide that transportation where they can go back and forth to court. We will provide housing while they're there to testify in court, where the office is paying for like hotel fees and things like that, where they will be able to come and stay to be able to testify. Um, if it's a local thing, we contact local law enforcement agencies to say, hey, be on alert. We may need you to kind of drive by this person's house a little bit more and just be on alert of any type of suspicious activity. And that way they can feel kind of comfortable that, something is being done to kind of um I guess a heavier barrier of protection. Sometimes it doesn't work because a lot of times if somebody is really really determined, then things would happen. But it's just kind of putting things in place to kind of make it more comfortable so they can follow through on those charges.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Attorney Oliver,
Mhm.
for sharing that information. So this time we want to bring all our panelists back on the screen. Okay, is that everyone? Okay, so I just want to recap some things. So thank you all for sharing that very important information. So at this time, now we would like our audience, if they have any questions for our panelists, they can share those through the comments, and we can share them. But while we're waiting for any questions, are there any um, last statements that you would like to make about domestic violence from our panelists? Anything that you thought about that you thought you would like our audience to know that we didn't cover? So, okay, we do have a question to Ms. James. Are there any programs to support GED or educational support for these services for the victims?
So we partner with Hines Community College, where they offer GED programs for victims and their families, their kids, And then we also partner with Job Corps. So anytime there are children of age and they're able to go to Job Corps, we give them the resources to try to get them into Job Corps where they could get their GEDs and also do some job trainings.
Okay, and that question was from our local Delta Sigma Theta chapter here. That's our studio audience. Okay, here's another question. What about connecting with low-income housing to ensure that they have the resources needed?
If that question is for me, yes, that's one of the major things we do. Once they come in, we connect and partner with all of the low income and also with like housing authorities to try to get them on the waiting list. And also we partner with some of the realtors that's in town that has rental property and stuff like that to try to get them in. And if there are other resources available where they could get vouchers to get assistance with their first month rent or down payments, we also, assist them with that as well.
Okay, and this question also can go to any of our other panelists. The same thing, connecting with low-income housing to ensure that they have resources needed.
One thing that we are fighting towards doing is we have a lack of shelters. So a lot of parts of the state don't even have shelters for victims. And so what we're doing is we're trying to appropriate more funding to the current shelters, which are at capacity, as well as some more funding for other areas that don't really have a shelter, so that the resources would be more readily available. Because if you think of someone experiencing domestic violence, one thing about it, if they have to go to a shelter, you already taking them away from home, and then you putting them in 2 or 3 counties away and away from family and isolating them. So we want to make sure that we can have shelters, within a certain radius of every single county.
Okay. This question is for Ms. James. So how many shelters are throughout the state that you know of?
I'm not sure of the actual number of shelters throughout Mississippi, but it's like Representative Nelson said, it's very limited. We're the only shelter that's on our coast, on our state line, from Adams County all the way down to Issaquah. Our house was a shelter, but now they're more of a resource because they don't have bedding. We have shelters in Jackson. I want to be more accurate to give you the number, but hold on.
I'm sorry I didn't ask that question earlier, but I just thought about it, especially for individuals that may live in other parts of the state. They might want to know if a shelter is close to their vicinity or in their vicinity.
Throughout Mississippi, we have 11 shelters.
Okay, 11.
Yes, we have one in Mendenhall, we have one in Meridian, we have Catholic Charities, which is in Jackson, we have Center for Violence in Pearl, Laurel, Biloxi, then us in Vicksburg, South Haven, and Tupelo and Columbus. So our house is still on our list, even though they don't house in individuals.
Okay. So, is there any point where your shelter is full and can't accommodate any other individuals that need that service?
Yeah. So a lot of times the shelters are full. Just say if they are coming from another area, because we don't just service Mississippi. We have had people that has come from far as Florida because they are trying to escape a situation. Or they come from Texas. They're trying to escape a situation, and we can't turn them around because they may go to one shelter and that shelter can't take them in, or they'll call another shelter and that shelter can't take them in. So they'll just keep traveling, or they'll keep going till they find a shelter that's available to take them in. So a lot of times the shelters are very limited. We work together up under the coalition, trying to make sure that we are able to accommodate as many as possible. A lot of times, sometimes we are not, but we do try to give them resources to other avenues that they may be able to take.
So in the case where your shelter is full, what do you do with the individuals? I mean, do you try to refer them to another shelter, or
If our shelter is full, we'll try to refer them over to the next available shelter. We have referred as far as to the coast, because Biloxi and Laurel has 2 shelters in their area, and we are more limited on this side of the Mississippi.
so how many individuals, can your shelter accommodate?
So we hold 22 beds, but that's depend on the families, because we may have a family of 5. We might have another family that has 6 kids. So it depends on the families, depend on how many come along with them.
Okay, and then we have another question from our audience, to the audience. Is there a process for repeat victims and a number of times they are able to get services, and how is that handled?
No, we don't turn around the victim, because a lot of times you're gonna find yourself with repeat victims. That may go back. They go through the abusive stage, and then they may turn around and go back to their honeymoon stage, and then they may come back out of that, that cycle of abuse. You have found some survivors that have spoken up and came out of domestic violence relationship, have said that they have been in 2 or 3 time repeated relationships. So anytime that they're seeking help and we're able to help them, we don't turn them around, because of how many times they've been in that situation.
Okay, so you all are always available whenever they need your services. They can come, and
if we have room to bring them in, we bring them in. If not, and a lot of times some of them don't even want to come into shelter. We work with them hand in hand through outreach. So through outreach, some may just need someone to talk to as a peer support, or they may need somebody to give them direction, or how to move about and getting protection orders or counseling sessions. We still provide all those services outside of shelter services.
Okay. Well, again, I think I want to just thank all of our distinguished panelists for taking the time just to share your perspectives on this important topic. I want to again thank Yazoo City Lamini chapter of Delta Sigma Theta and Sorority Incorporated for forming this studio audience. Y'all give us a wave again over there. All right, and shout out to Ms. Ramonda Delaware for providing the space for our studio audience and the use of her technology. So again, thank you. I want to also thank Mr. Anthony Banks for serving as our virtual program engineer. So there he is back there. And last but not least, I want to thank our listening and viewing audience for joining us. And I look forward to seeing everyone on another segment of Deltasations Live, and wishing everyone a great evening. Thank you again.